Hello, everyone, and welcome to the City of Toronto panel, The Evolution of Data Analytics. My name is Alan Davidoff. I'm the Senior Vice President and Practice Leader here at Environics Analytics, and I am going to be today's moderator for the panel that will be 45 minutes long. Please note, there won't be any Q&A at the end of the session. We are going to ask everyone to either leave their questions in the comment or question box, and we'll be happy to get back to you with those questions, either by the panelists or someone from the EA team. You can stop by the virtual public sector booth where myself and the team will be there, and some of the panelists will pop in as throughout the course of the day, or you can just email us directly and just send us your questions and we'll be happy to answer them. But really excited about the 45 minutes that you're about to hear. The panelists have had some great conversations that they've already started, and really excited about the different journeys each division and department of the City of Toronto that will be participating today will share with you guys. So without further ado, I want to introduce our four panelists. First, Linda Hazan, the Director, CMO, Communications, Programming, and Customer Engagement at the Toronto Public Library. Second, Ian Williams, Director of Information Management at the Toronto Police Service, and Gia Liu, Manager Research Analytics for the Toronto Parks, Forestry and Recreation. And last but very not least, Michelle Stronach, Division Chief of Analytics and Decision Support at Toronto Fire. We have a great group. You guys will all really enjoy this session and the quite interesting journeys each of these leaders and their departments and their divisions have gone through and where they're at today. So with that being said, we have four different themes and areas that we're going to cover today, and these are the questions that we'll be going through. So first and foremost, we'll get into more specifics. How did their organization start their data journey or restart it in some cases? What their big audacious goals are. And we all have big audacious goals, so we're going to be talking about that, and I'm excited to have each panelist share that. We'll be talking to the barriers to those goals. And we know that, barriers come at different shapes and forms and throughout the different parts of the journey. So we'll be talking about what those are and how they've overcome it. And last but not least, partnerships and how they play a role within the data journey. And that is whether it's through cross-functioning teams within the division, within the municipality, or external, such as partners like EA. So with that being said, let's get to the discussion. So thank you all for being here today. Really excited to talk to you about data analytics and your journeys. So why don't we get to the first question that I've outlined, and I'm going to ask Linda to start. Not picking on Linda, but okay. Knowing where all your journeys are, and kind of have you start first, before you all go, maybe a quick introduction of your roles within the department, and then sort of answering the question. So how did you get here? More specifically, how did your organization buy in to either start the data journey or restart the data journey? Because I know sometimes it's a matter of stop and start, stop and start. So if you can start, that'd be great, Linda.
That would be our story. So I head up the team at Toronto Public Library that is communications, customer engagement, which includes marketing and brand and advertising. And I do have a small programming team as well that does some of our literary and cultural programming at the library. Okay. I've been there for 15 years. And we have, as you said, had a bit of a stop and start as it relates to data. Within the marketing department, we have tried several times to bring in external data like EA, and we've worked within our department, within other departments within our organization who are also on a learning curve, like our planning department and our IT department. And so, there have been some challenges. I think our biggest challenges have been, first of all, with educating ourselves and understanding what we need, and just building that learning within our organization. And then I think the other thing has been actually building capacity to be able to collect data, to analyze data, to understand it. And so we're at a place actually now, and I think I often say this, that timing's everything in our organization. And things have really come together in terms of the people that we've brought in, where we're at in our strategic journey and what we're trying to achieve. And so our data program is really a core part of our strategic plan, and also part of our digital strategy that we just developed and released as part of our strategic plan. So that's been just a little bit of our journey. I'll talk a little bit more as we go further into the conversation.
Well, thank you. That's a lot to start with. Well, Michelle, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I've been with Toronto Fire a little bit less than what Linda had, for 5 years. I was brought in with the goal of building capabilities needed for better fact decision making. Fire is kind of interesting because as far as data, we've been recording data about our incidences for well over 100 years. In fact, I'm on a project right now trying to pull all that data and look at it. It's very interesting. I have a team of 7 analysts, actually analysts and information specialists. So we provide statistical data, we do predictions, we do impact analysis, building of dashboards for service leaders in fire. And so coming into the organization, you know, there was already buy-in, there was already that need. And so very, you know, a lot of support that way. But I had to build a business case to develop the skills and capabilities. We had the technology, but we weren't using them. So I had to think through really how we thought through business problems. And so, yeah, so we've been developing over those years. I guess the challenge, I don't know if we want to talk about challenges yet, probably not, but the things that all our service leaders, if you look at operations, public education, prevention, those kind of the key service areas within fire services, the thing they have in common is location, and community. So that's one of the areas that my team has been really working hard to bring together. So that's, I'll stop there too, so we don't get too far into the to the other questions.
Sounds good. I would love to actually go back 80, 60 years and pull out some of the logs and see how are you guys importing that information?
It's hilarious. And what's really funny is some of the things they talk about, like the boys that are breaking the alarm boxes. Wow. In the reports, that's how they say it. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, definitely, that's for a different conversation, a different day, I guess.
Yeah.
Gia, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, I would say there's similar threads for me and my team in Parks, Forestry, and Recreation to Michelle and Linda. So I'm pretty new to the city. I've only been here around 2.5 years. And I was brought in, similar to Michelle, to build the capacity and of the research and analytics team. So we sit within the policy and strategic planning branch within Parks, Forestry, and Recreation, and we support this rather broad division that covers community recreation, parks, and urban forestry. You know, sometimes it feels like we're 3 divisions in one, and so our topics of research or the questions that come from decision makers and the need for evidence can range from you know, social issues and data around sense of belonging, or you know, recreation service delivery, all the way through to, you know, what are our nature-based solutions or natural assets like parks and the urban forest contributing towards quality of life in Toronto. So it's a really interesting team, and I would say the journey for us of building up the team, it really starts with people. So bringing on board the right skill sets. You know, the skill sets have really evolved quite a bit in the past decade, and I think today's data scientists and data analysts are you know, come with a different skill set. So I think bringing on board that skill set was you know, the focus initially, and now that we have that going, turning our minds to, you know, what are the data sets that we need that inform our outcomes. So we're very much a team that looks at the city's strategic plan and results and outcomes and framing them. So we have evaluators on our team as well, who are very much kind of in the social sciences domain, and coupled with the data and analytics and technology enabled research capabilities. So bringing those two sides together, the social sciences and, you know, some of the more quantitative skill sets, has been really rewarding. But, you know, I think initially it was a challenge to bring those skill sets in and trying to explain why do we need them. I would say similar to Michelle, PF&R has a real hunger for data. It's a big division, so decision makers, you know, we're managing 15,000 plus parks across the city and over 150 recreation centers. So we really cover the whole city. And so understanding the local needs is really critical. So that location-based analysis is really important for us as well. So geospatial data and how it intersects with, you know, all the other data sets that are out there, StatsCan, you know, the wonderful data sets that Environics Analytics provides. The goal for the team is really to stitch all that data together to answer our key outcome questions, and the outcomes are really centered around quality of life for the public.
Yeah, that's great. It's funny how when we first started working, I guess initially just the thought about parks and data, kind of try to figure out sort of the correlation between, you know, the budgets and what typically people use parks for. They don't think about all the work that goes behind it and all the recreation centers. Same, you know, for library and fire and tracking and whatnot. So, but it's interesting how all of you kind of have started with the building blocks and, you know, teams and people before getting into understanding your own analytics and getting the right expertise in-house before. And I know we're getting to partnerships a little bit later. But with that being said, why don't I hand it off to Ian to sort of, you know, delve into how you guys got started as well. And is it similar to those that we've heard thus far?
Thanks, Ellen. Hi, everyone. I think we're going to see some very connected themes as I describe a little bit of our journey. So I'm currently the Director of Information Management at the Toronto Police Service. I've been at TPS for nearly 15 years now. And in this role, I have the benefit of supporting quite a number of teams in really important information management capabilities, like records management systems, our property and evidence management units, info security, as well as information access, and last but not least, our analytics department. And so across all of those areas, there's some really common threads about treating information appropriately, who should have access to that information. And that would include the public in many ways. And because of investigations and the nature of the work that we're responsible for, there's also a lot of sensitivity in that data, of course, a lot of PII or personal identifying information that's critical to manage that as a whole. Policing is a very data intensive industry. I think we can all recognize that, and we all have that as a common theme because now increasingly our operations strategy throughout many organizations are data intensive. In policing, in many ways, our role and what's driven how we got here was due to that need for information in a timely way, in a connected way. And so to get here and get the organization excited about analytics and using information as an asset, it took almost no incentivization because everybody wanted that. Everybody knew that's what we needed, and they could feel the pain points of not having timely or visualized information to help solve a case or to help make a strategic decision. And so as we progressed, my role and the role of analytics in the organization was more to help bring pieces of information together in a logical way, in a secure way for the right audience. And so that's happened gradually over time. In some ways, we were able to move relatively quicker, but in other ways, things didn't move as quickly, of course, as we'd like. And there's some really challenging aspects to using data, as we all know and experience. So lots of stops and starts, we thought we could get something done really quickly, but then there's some hurdles there. But we've seen some really nice success, again, with bringing data together from Stats Canada and some of our other partners as well to help more broad community safety and well-being discussions. And I think there's a lot more to come in that regard.
You're right, Ian. There is definitely that sort of theme about, how do you put a team together? How do you build on those building blocks? And how do you put a plan together? And once you have a plan and you start moving forward, it's easier to be moving in the direction that way. And I guess, all of you have said something to that extent. And I guess, the next question about the big audacious goals, would you say, you all have a big audacious goals that you've presented and talked about, or do you have one in secret that you guys are kind of using as your shining light or northern star? Why don't we start with GF this round?
Well, I mean, I can't talk about my secret goal. Well, the big audacious goal is really, I think for us, we don't actually have a lot of data about parks and parks use because, we have 1,500 plus parks in the city, and they range from the size of the Toronto Island to, a little parkette in downtown Toronto, or something as large as Centennial Park. So I think, we want to be able to get to a point where we can answer key questions about resource allocation, about planning in terms of serving the public with data at people's fingertips. And we pretty much leverage whatever we can to do that, whether it is in community recreation, we're building out kind of a program evaluation approach where we're looking at social programs and what are the theories of change, what are the measurement frameworks that go with that inform the data that we need. Or something as simple as knowing, well, how many people actually visit parks? And so, leveraging big data and mobile data is a critical kind of component to that, to have the broad overview, both of the whole city, but also be able to go granular by park to understand, what are the seasonal variations? How does that data then map against climate change projections, so that we can look ahead and really plan for different scenarios, as we know, the climate emergency especially is at the forefront of our minds at Parks, Forestry and Recreation. So I think it's really just how do we get at telling our story to the public in terms of what we're doing, what we're able to achieve in terms of outcomes, and using data or really any kind of research methodologies that fits the bill.
Okay, that's great. Michelle?
Yeah, I think the big audacious goal for us is, we've pretty well talked about it already, but it's the idea of having connected quality data about the community that we serve and across the fire service programs, but also across the organization as a whole, the enterprise of the City of Toronto. So, my goal has always been to give the service leaders the data they need at their fingertips and the knowledge and how to use those to make both strategic and tactical decisions. But the more we dig, the more we need other data. So that connections, and Ian talked about this quite a bit, is really critical. So, leading into your next question, that partnerships is really important too. Yeah, the complexity of our communities, and the limitations of our resources. One of the critical things with fire service is community risk assessment and planning. So it's something we've always done, but it's become more and more formalized in the past few years. There's now a mandate to do that in Ontario. But by doing that, it takes bringing in a whole lot of data about the community. So we've started that journey a while ago. It's going to continue for quite a bit. But the more we understand about building structures, not just where they're located, how old the building is, what kind of fire suppression systems they have, what's the demographics. Is there having a garbage pickup problem on the outside? There's all these things that can lead to the factors that tell us that there may be issues, fire issues in the future. So we're pulling all that together, and we start small and keep building upon that. So that it really is a big audacious goal, because it will continue for some time, and we'll just keep building upon that as we go.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be great if you can get predictability on when the next fire will be?
Well, we have a rough idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then actually that's where Amphronix has really helped us, because we've been able to predict sort of the communities where they're more likely to have fires, and then also kind of drill down to maybe why those fires are happening and how do we communicate with those folks.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's getting there.
getting there. Yep.
Slowly but surely. Linda, do you want to go next?
Sure, we have all those goals too. I would say there's sort of two, and they're interconnected. So the first is more of a organizational goal, which is we really need to understand our customer uses better, and it's a bit of a theme here. But we've relied very much on the library card and for gathering data about our customers, and really that's extremely limited because we don't keep a lot of that data by practice, and also because that's only one of truly hundreds of uses of the library. And so just finding ways to be able to, and putting processes in place where we can efficiently collect clean data that is useful, that can tell us what our customers are doing, is critical. From a marketing perspective and listening, I'm more the customer side, I would say. You guys are more the people that would serve me in our organization. It's very, very challenging for us to be able to communicate with our customers in ways that is relevant and timely for them. We have 100 branches across the system. We have 47 million visits a year online and in branch. Over 30 million items are circulated every year. And our customer base is extremely broad. We serve everybody in Toronto, very similar to the rest of you. And so understanding who our customers are at their point of need is really, really critical. We can have a mom come in with her toddler for a story time in the morning, but she can come in as an entrepreneur in the afternoon using our spaces, and in the evening she's come for a literary event. So how do I speak to her at the point in time that she needs the information to understand what we have to offer, how she can find it, how she can use it? That's my big audacious goal, to be able to segment and target these audiences and understand them, and then personalize the content and information for them in a way that's really relevant. I'd like to do that. That's my big audacious goal.
That is definitely a big audacious goal. I would also say probably most people don't know all the different programs at the library. And all sort of what you've just articulated is quite interesting, because people use it for so many different facets.
Yeah.
So how do you tap into that? That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
On our budgets too. That's the other challenge, is to be able to do all that with our budgets.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Ian, dare I ask your big audacious goal? Is it in your business plan?
It is actually, and pretty much the number one goal for our analytics and information management strategies as we move forward. Really, it's to leverage analytics to drive workflows that align with our products and services that we deliver to community members in Toronto. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily see policing as a series of products or services that get delivered. Most people, I think, just think when you call 911, you get a police officer or police officers and they attend, and that's what you get. But in reality, there's a series of service delivery lines that represent public safety. And so we're aiming to use analytics to drive those so that community members can access those services in a more clear manner, that they understand which services are being used in which ways, and to be able to actually nudge people in certain directions as well. A lot of our digital transformation as we move forward, turning what today are kind of manual processes into more automated digital experiences for people to connect with public safety services in Toronto is going to be driven by use of information and analytics to create defined services and to be able to automate much of that workflow. Equally for internal members, to be able to use those same data points to automate the workflows to have police members engage with members of the community based on the nature of the problem that's being experienced. And some of those could be traffic related concerns, concerns about violence or property crimes like break and enters, for example. And there's different types of services that are going to come with that. Some of it's 911 response, so you need an officer there right away because there's an imminent danger or life and death type scenarios. Others are going to be investigations that come as a result of that. In other events, it's more around security of a mass event, like we would see Taste of the Danforth, for example, and things like that that need that level of security and event management from a police perspective. But I think a lot of people don't recognize the service line that that represents. And so we're going to be using analytics and information to support a lot of those in a way that we've never seen before.
Yeah, I remember as we were prepping for this, you had mentioned during COVID where you guys were right in with sort of the response center and how data played a huge part, which kind of layers on top of that as well, where most people wouldn't think, the data analysts and those that manage the data would be part of that, typically for police response or police service, or probably in any other sort of municipal department as well. So I found that very fascinating as well. And probably 10 years ago, that would have been your big audacious goal. Just be, relied on as much as you are now. And I'm sure that applies to all of you. If we look back 5-10 years ago, that probably was the big audacious goal, that, data would be taken as seriously and be part of sort of the strategy and sort of how you approach things versus in some degrees, just kind of trying to wing it or learn from past experiences theoretically. So it's amazing how far all of you have come in all the different departments, which kind of leads into my next question. And that we touched upon is the barriers. And I know with all of your different areas, there's been barriers that have come up. Part of that maybe is part of the stop and start. Part of that is just, the team, the dynamics. Sometimes it's finding partnerships, but do you guys want to, and I know, Michelle, you've highlighted a few, but maybe do you want to delve into that a little bit further in terms of maybe some of the barriers to your goals?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, with our journey, it hasn't really been start and stop. It's been start, keep going. There's been a lot of drive. But it was so driven that at some points we had to go back because we didn't take the time to build the proper data governance. And in emergency services or in a organization where you're not necessarily traditionally a data mature organization, spending the time to talk about terms and definitions and who gets access to what or whatever is not too exciting, and it's hard to get the stakeholders' attention. And so that's one of the barriers that it's made us kind of go back. But even then, I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. I see it as a learning process, because sometimes you have to demonstrate why you need something in order for them to see it.
Right.
But the bigger barriers are the, if we're going to have connected data and is how do you do that? How do you bring the things together? And it's particularly difficult when your processes and systems are not integrated, and the teams are not necessarily integrated. So it's working with those teams to try to pull out the commonalities and common understanding of where we can help each other and how we can share data in order to accomplish similar or same goals. So, even listening to this conversation, you can see how close we all are in our very, very different organizations with the same needs in different ways, I guess. So,
yeah, that's a great point.
Actually,
sorry, Gia.
Sorry, I was going to just build on Michelle's note about data governance. So we started the data governance working group within Parks, Forestry, and Recreation 2 years ago. And what I found really interesting is that everybody was like really eager to get it going. So I think we almost had the opposite scenario where people were so frustrated with the quality of their data and whether or not they could access it that everybody wanted to join in. And now data governance is driven by data champions who are throughout the division, and the agenda kind of runs itself. And so I also wonder sometimes if what we call data governance, to the average staff, they might call it something else. They might call it, I have a frustration with the data quality in our systems, or this is incorrect, or I need to talk to someone, but I don't know who to talk to. So bringing people together and convening that space and just facilitating those discussions around data architecture and definitions and access, I found that it's actually like once that framework was set up, it kind of runs itself. But we talk about it in terms of data quality a
Yeah,
lot of the time.
yeah, that's
really
the
guys.
key. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, and the other thing, I was going to note in terms of barriers, I find it really challenging to hire in this market, because everybody is recruiting data scientists and that skill set across all the industries. And so to be on the market looking for talent, like I think that's been a pretty big challenge, is finding qualified, experienced staff, and data science is kind of a newer skill set that there aren't copious amounts of people out there who have that skill set. So that's definitely been a challenge for us in the past couple of years, kind of starts and stops.
Right.
And everything starts with people, and if we don't have that skill set on board, we may have the most amazing data, it doesn't move us forward as well. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that's a great point and a great barrier to a lot of organizations, with whether it's in sort of the public sector or any other sort of sector. So that's quite interesting. Ian, do you want to jump in?
I think Michelle and Gio both hit some really good points that I would also share. And then just on top of that, and I'm sure they both had this one too, it's time. Nobody wants to wait for analytics. They want that right now, and lots of it, which often isn't recognized in relation to the amount of work that it takes to get the product, or to get those insights at the end of the day. And so we've really struggled with everyone wanting everything right at this moment, which is challenging, of course, to plan for. And so that's been a barrier, ironically. It's a good thing because it drives a lot of the emphasis and the recognition of the importance of analytics. But we've addressed that largely through creating plans and then taking a phased approach, which I would generally categorize as being agile. And we've actually leveraged a lot of agile project management and agile culture within the team. I wouldn't call it true agile, so a lot of agile purists would probably be horrified with how we're approaching it. But it's a hybrid of really how Toronto Police Service needs to operate as an organization, which is historically risk averse with data and other things generally because of the nature of the information, the sensitivity around that, but at the same time needing to get things done really quickly. And so we've taken that approach where there's consistent deliverables towards a larger deliverable. And so that's worked relatively well over time.
Yeah.
And Ian, do you ever find that the Agile approach crashes against the Waterfall approach, where, I mean, I sometimes experience that with tech services, and I think your situations is you're looking at technology and data probably together, and the two styles really clash. You know, the like, I need every single requirement up front documented, and then we're going to start the conversation. Yeah, I think the agile approach is so critical. I feel that too in our team. I think that's how we're able to pilot. You know, we position things as pilots, and we, you know, create kind of a minimum viable product, and then we go from there and build on it. And that gets us a lot further than, you know, sitting down and trying to collect requirements in detail.
100%.
See, I think the thing is our stakeholders don't necessarily know what they want, or they don't know what they don't know. So what Ian, what you were talking about is agile, we call baby steps, but it is that's our strategy, because they have to see what's possible before they can understand what the requirements are. And when I say they, I mean my customers, my internal customers. But I really like your point about the difference between the traditional waterfall, which just, to me, doesn't work with data and data analysis. You can have a process, but it's still always going to be building upon each other, because you can't do it all at once. And things are evolving so quickly.
Yeah, that's an interesting point where you're kind of faced with everybody wanting something today, but then they also kind of don't know what they want to a certain degree, because they don't know and they can't sort of see everything in a very clear, crystal clear sort of fashion. It's an interesting place to be in. Linda, from the public library standpoint, I'm assuming, you know, you've experienced a lot of this, and this sort of falls within your area as well. Is there something else that you've found to be a barrier?
Yeah, there's a few things. I mean, interesting listening to all of this. It's an and. I think one of the interesting things that you guys are kind of speaking to that has been part of our evolution is understanding the value of data. And once you have that understanding of the real value, the practical value, the business value, then you can start getting some traction to move things forward. So that was a barrier for us. And it continues to be a barrier from a marketing perspective for me, because there's still a thought that, well, we just need a bookmark or a brochure. Why do you need data in order to be able to decide what we're going to do? We already know what we need to do. And you know, understanding whether it's working and all of that sort of stuff is still a bit of an education process within our organization to be able to articulate the value of being able to do these kinds of things strategically with data. So I would say that that's one thing. And now that the organization does understand the value as it relates to outcomes and business cases, and you know, we've had a lot more pressure in the public sector put on us to really demonstrate the value of the money that we're spending. And so that's been a driver to overcome some of those barriers. At the library, one of the other things that's, you know, we're starting to overcome it too, but traditionally, privacy has been a cornerstone of our service. You use us and we don't know how you use us. And that's a benefit to you, right? And it's important that we can continue to maintain that. So how can we ensure that we're collecting and using data in a way that respects our customers' privacy, and that we can be transparent about that? Because part of our job is also to educate on data, right? We have programs that are on algorithmic literacy, and how is your data being collected and used, and what are the biases in it, and all of that sort of stuff. So some of the things that we've been doing is making our use of data transparent to the customer. But there's still culturally within our organization a resistance to the use of data and what that means from a privacy perspective for our customers. So, I mean, it's a barrier and a concern that we're overcoming in a way that's, you know, responsible and still core to our brand and our service. But that's definitely a challenge. And then the last thing I'll say, and you guys have all touched on it, is expertise within the organization. But from my perspective, being the internal customer, we have now are building out teams and supports within the organization that have that expertise that we can draw on. But I still need my team to have that expertise. They still need to understand the insights of the data that we're using and collecting. we still need the dashboards, the data visualizations. We need ways to understand how to use it. And so, how do we build out that capacity within my team and my organization? And how does that relate to the other capacities we're building within the organization? Should our data analysts be within our division, within my division, or should they be within data teams? Or, we're just starting to work through that and figure that out. I mean, I think it needs to be in both, but to Gia's point, getting that expertise, particularly within a marketing framework and a communications framework, is a challenge for us as well. And I personally need to build up my skills in order to be able to build out that within my team. So,
yeah,
well, Linda, sorry, I wanted to just respond to that. We've been using a matrix model quite a lot in PF&R. So we have a public engagement team. Their job is to interface with the public, engage them, get feedback. And what we've done is we've actually taken a staff member from that team who reports to the manager of public engagement, but he kind of has a dotted line to my team and kind of learns and develops, and, like all the tools that we develop, he kind of rides along and joins us a lot of the time, so that, as a member of the public engagement team, he builds that capacity without necessarily, reporting to me, or so it's almost kind of like a distributed model, but with a matrix where, you have people sitting in urban forestry or in parks, but they join us in a lot of our meetings or learn and shares, so that we could, spread that capability as we learn and build without necessarily having to worry about structure as much. So
that's great. And I would imagine that person's insights help build out your understanding of the needs of the organization as well.
Absolutely.
So that sounds great.
Yeah. That's actually a great segue into the last question. And we only do have a few more minutes left, but maybe keep the answers a little bit shorter, but that's a great segue into partnerships. So partnerships cross departments, cross teams, external. Maybe if each of you can sort of quickly touch upon what do those mean to your work, to your goals, to sort of everything that you're trying to drive forward. And I'll let Ian start first this time around.
Okay, I think as probably for all of us, partnerships are critical. I don't think we can do much of what we do without working with some of our, whether it's partner divisions, partner agencies, partners like our colleagues here from Environics. It's a collaborative effort at the end of the day. We're seeing that kind of taken to the next level with community safety and well-being and the plan that the City of Toronto is putting in place. It's very clearly recognizing that what community safety and well-being means in Toronto requires different partners and different service delivery organizations to be together at the table and to use analytics to drive what we're doing and who's responsible for it. So that SafeTO plan is like the perfect example of partnerships, and data is at the core of it.
That's great. Linda, do you want to add to that?
What he said for sure. No, absolutely. I think, and I think that's one of the other audacious goals, is for us to be able to connect our data and be able to understand the broader impacts and outcomes that we have for the city. I think that would be amazing. The other key, I will just say, the key partnership for us that we've had has been with our IT department and with our for us, it's in the planning department, but where the data analytics and the data management has been the difference. Being able to connect these groups has made the difference for us to be able to move forward in a way that we haven't been able to move forward before. That's my short answer.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, Gia, one of you.
Yeah,
Michelle, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'll add in just a little bit. Definitely, it's a journey that you can't do alone. It involves, I could build a team of brilliant data scientists, but if our stakeholders don't understand how to use it, at that level, then we're not doing our job properly. So so we have to build our capabilities and skills together. And that's at the smaller level, but organizationally, I think we've talked about this a number of times, the GCC, our partners, our internal partners, external partners, but it's not also about just data connections. It's also about best practices sharing. I've learned a lot through my partnerships and hearing their journeys and things that worked and didn't work. And it also helped to bring my team along as well, because they don't get that benefit of seeing other organizations and how they do things. So the more we build those relationships, the better we get at that.
I agree with that 100%. It's so critical. You can't, it's so important to be able to be learning from other partners, divisions, vendors. It's an ongoing learning process for sure.
Yeah.
I would just add, yeah, I totally agree with that, Michelle. And I think having that richness of cross sharing across whether it's the city or sectors, that would be super helpful. I think I'm just going to pick up one point to add, which is around the translation of data speak to plain language. I think that's a barrier that we face, but it's also an opportunity. I know, our partnership with Environics Analytics has very much been about, like, how can we translate all this really super fancy work that you guys do with statistical modeling into plain language so we can explain it to our stakeholders. So I think that translation work and leveraging the expertise, but being able to translate that expertise into plain language, that's been really important to us. And also being able to say, hey, Environics, what about this? We throw questions at, our partners too, for them to help us. Like, how would you respond to this difficult question? How would you explain it? But I think having a little bit of that distance and collaboration of, very public facing orientation, which we have, and then, Environics and you guys, like the geek symbol on the wall behind you, you're the data geeks. And so there's some really fancy work that you're doing that we'd love to translate into plain language. And I think, especially with machine learning models and algorithms, I think that becomes increasingly more important, is to actually, we develop like a one-page infographic of like, how do you explain the journey of data as it moves through these algorithms? So, my aunt or grandmother can understand that. So I think that's been a really important, but also fruitful partnership to kind of go through this journey together.
That's a great point and a great way to end sort of this panel discussion. So I feel like we can go on for hours talking about all of these things. And I just want to thank all of you today for joining us, for sharing your perspectives and your expertise and your journeys. So thank you all. Happy maybe we can take this on and put a webinar together, another session in the future. And for those listening in, again, please leave us your questions in the comment box, in the question box. Come by the public sector virtual booth. My team will be there, myself and some others, or send us your emails and we'll get some of the panelists to respond back with answers. But thank you all so much for coming and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.